Some mornings you wake up and realize your life is still here. And that's the problem. The kettle clicked off in the kitchen, the same way it always did, the same way it had every morning for 40 years. Eleanor sat in the window nook, a teacup in her hand, not drinking. Outside, the drizzle clung to the glass like fingers too polite to knock. Martin hummed in the other room, a tuneless sound. He wasn't unhappy. He wasn't anything. Really, just there, reliable, present, comfortable, like a favorite jumper you don't remember putting on. And somehow, that made it worse. She blinked at the street, the lamppost, the crooked fence, the brick wall near the corner. And there, like a glitch in her gray routine, stood someone entirely out of place, young, disheveled, alive in a way that made the world tilt. He leaned against the wall with the lazy arrogance of someone who didn't care what time it was or who was watching. And then she saw it, him, head tilted, eyes closed, relief on his face. A public street, a private act. Eleanor froze. She should look away. She should be appalled. But instead, she felt something click, not moral outrage, not judgment, something else. A ripple in the silence of her. She stood up, opened the door, stepped into the wet morning, and walked straight toward the interruption. Click, 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 her sensible shoes on the pavement. As she passed him, she spoke, not loudly, not sternly, just enough. "Excuse me." His eyes flew open. He zipped up, startled, caught for a second. He looked like a child mid-mischief. Then he smirked. "Sorry, my bad." His voice was rough, casual, no shame. She stared longer than she should. There was nothing romantic in it, nothing sensible. Just that curious pull toward something forbidden and alive. Her heartbeat stuttered. She looked away, kept walking. But the world had already cracked open behind her. By the time she reached home, Martin was waiting by the table with tea, the honey already drizzled, toast cut diagonally. His routine so gentle it felt like guilt. He kissed her forehead. She smiled, and all she could think about was the way the young man held himself, the way he smirked like he had a secret, the way his presence dared the world to notice. Later, when the house was still and the tea cold, she opened her laptop and typed, "Men in leather jackets." She wasn't looking for names, she was looking for a feeling. Something sharp, something unruly, something that reminded her that, once, she used to want. And today, she did again. Some mornings, you don't feel lonely, you feel invisible. Like your existence is too quiet to echo, too polite to demand notice. Eleanor Reed knew that feeling better than most. The sky over Cambridge was the kind of dull gray that soaked straight into your bones. A soft, steady drizzle kissed the pavement as she stepped out of her front door. Scarf looped once around her neck, keys in her coat pocket. Her steps fell into rhythm, click, click, click on the wet sidewalk, past the hedgerows and empty driveways. She liked mornings like this. Or maybe she'd simply made peace with them. After all, they didn't ask much of her, just presence, just motion. And for a long time, that had been enough. 65 years old, retired, married to the same man for 40. Martin was kind, devoted, predictable. He made tea without being asked, folded towels into thirds, kept the garden neat. No violence, no betrayal, just consistency. The kind that dulled over time like the edges of a well-worn spoon. She passed the bus stop. A few school children huddled beneath the shelter, their laughter slicing through the morning stillness. She used to teach kids like that, lively, impatient with silence. Now, silence filled her days like mist. And then it happened. A flicker in her peripheral vision. Just beyond the old bookshop, a young man, maybe 20-something, leaning casually against the brick wall. He wasn't waiting for a bus. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't doing anything anyone should be doing in public. She stopped for a moment. Eleanor thought she must be mistaken. But no, the stance, the shoulder tilt, the hand her stomach flipped, ridiculous and sudden. She should cross the street. She should frown and walk faster, make a mental note to call the council. Instead, her feet moved forward. Toward him, he hadn't noticed her yet. His head was tilted back slightly, a smirk tugging at one corner of his lips, careless, unguarded. She stopped a few paces away, cleared her throat, softly. "Excuse me." He startled, zipped up, blinked at her like he just remembered other people existed then. Of all things, he smiled. "Sorry, got caught, bad habit." His accent was local, but unrefined. His eyes, clear and young, met hers without flinching. And Eleanor did something she hadn't done in a very long time. She stared back, longer than she should have, long enough for it to mean something. He didn't move, neither did she finally. She blinked, turned, resumed walking. Her breath came quicker than before. Her cheeks felt oddly warm. What the hell just happened? Her house was just 3 blocks down. She walked faster now, heart fluttering for no good reason. She wasn't shaken. Not really. Just aware, hyper-aware of her own skin, of the damp in the air, of how long it had been since someone's presence had disrupted her without permission. When she got home, Martin greeted her the same way he always did. "Where have you been, love?" "Just my walk," she said, unwrapping her scarf. He had made her toast, soft-boiled egg tea. She thanked him, kissed his cheek. He sat with her at the table, flipping through the paper, completely at peace. She stirred her tea slowly, thought about that smirk, that look, that split-second pause where she hadn't felt 65 or married or invisible. She felt something. Martin asked if she needed anything from the shop. She shook her head. He kissed her forehead and left. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, she exhaled deeply, like someone who had been holding in a truth. She booted up her laptop, typed the words slowly. Leather jacket, young man, messy hair. A sea of images flooded the screen. She clicked through them one by one, not looking for him, not really. She was looking for the feeling, that flicker, that thrill, that strange, reckless breathlessness that said, "You're still here, you still want." And maybe, just maybe, you're still wanted. The next morning, the air carried that same damp chill. Eleanor's shoes tapped a soft beat on the pavement, but her steps hesitated as she neared the corner near the bookshop. She told herself she wasn't looking. But there he was, same wall, same slouch, same maddening smirk for a brief second. She paused mid-stride. Her heart, without permission, skipped. She could have turned back, pretended not to notice, walked past like a stranger to her own memory. But instead, she stepped closer. "You really have a fondness for this wall," she said, her voice light but precise. He glanced down, startled again. "Damn busted," he said, zipping up with a laugh. "What are the odds?" She smiled, surprised by herself. "Maybe the matrix glitched." He chuckled. "Yeah, you're definitely the anomaly." Eleanor let out a laugh real from the gut. It startled her. She hadn't laughed like that in ages. The kind that leaves your chest a little hollow, a little light. He looked at her, properly looked. "I didn't expect you to talk to me again," he said. "I didn't expect to want to," she replied, then raised a brow. "And yet, here we are." He stepped off the wall, adjusted his coat. "What's your name?" "Eleanor," she said, "and yours?" "James." They stood there, rain whispering in the leaves above, neither quite sure how to fill the silence. "I'm not usually this exhibitionist," James said with a shrug. "Just timing, I guess. Or maybe you just like an audience." He gave a low laugh. "God, you're dangerous." "Retired," she said with a mock sigh. "Danger's all I've got left." He laughed again, genuinely. It made something warm unfold in her. They parted after that, no promises, no suggestions, just a quiet mutual amusement that something odd had happened again. When she got home, the front door creaked in familiar protest. The house smelled of tea and toast. Martin sat at the table, reading his paper. "You're back early," he said. She nodded. The rain started up again. He folded the paper, motioned to the kitchen. "I saved you the last egg." She thanked him, sat, stirred her tea. The window behind him framed the still street. Martin drizzled honey into his mug, completely unaware that she was remembering the way James's eyes lingered, the curve of his laugh, the boldness, the youth, the irreverence, not because he was attractive, but because she had noticed and noticed herself noticing. When Martin left to run errands, Eleanor lingered in the lounge. Her laptop blinked open. One tab still left from last night. She clicked. Pages of images, faces. Her gaze was distant, not fixed on any particular photo. She didn't want James. Not in the way people assumed when older women looked twice at younger men. She wanted that part of herself that still reacted, that still woke up when provoked, that hadn't yet turned to stone under decades of kindness. And that evening, as Martin sat beside her on the sofa, watching a show they'd both seen before, she leaned her head gently against his shoulder. He turned, smiled, kissed her hair. She smiled back. But her eyes remained on the screen, unfocused, where a character moved through rain and made a choice. Eleanor thought quietly, so did I. The rain had lightened, but the streets still glistened like polished stone. Eleanor didn't rush. Her walk that morning was less about exercise, more about possibility. She pretended not to notice herself checking corners, glancing ahead before she reached them. And there he was again. James walked along the opposite pavement, hands deep in his coat pockets, hood down when he saw her. He paused mid-step, then changed direction. "You live around here?" he asked. Slowing beside her, she nodded. "Couple of houses down." He glanced over his shoulder, then back at her with that crooked half-smile. "Should have guessed." "Why?" "You've got the walk of someone who knows the cracks in the sidewalk." Eleanor smiled. "That's the most poetic way I've heard anyone say I look settled." James laughed. "I meant it as a compliment." They reached her front gate. She opened it and crouched to inspect a few of her plants, fingers brushing a leaf with small holes chewed through the edges. "Caterpillars," she murmured. James stood a few steps away, watching. "Do you talk to them?" he asked. "Sometimes," she said. "They listen better than people." A pause, then. "I didn't think I'd see you again," he said. "I thought the same." Eleanor stood, brushing her hands on her coat. But then, strange things repeat themselves when they want to be noticed. James raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "It means, I think you're part of a pattern now." He tilted his head, amused. "Is that a bad thing?" "That depends," she said, "on whether the pattern's meant to be broken or followed." He looked at her for a moment, then said, "You're not like most women I meet." "I should hope not." They stood in silence again, the kind that wasn't awkward, just full of what wasn't being said. He gestured toward the street. "I should get going." "You just got here." "Didn't want to intrude." "You didn't." He hesitated. Eleanor stepped slightly closer, eyes curious. "Tell me, James, what is it you're looking for on these morning walks?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "I don't know, a place to be, a pause, maybe someone to surprise me." She nodded slowly. "Surprise is underrated." He smiled. "You're full of them." She opened her gate wider, just slightly. "You want a cup of tea?" His eyes flickered uncertain, then bright. Yeah, I do." Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and toast crumbs. The warmth of it clung to his coat as he stepped in, eyes scanning photos on the hallway wall. "Is this your husband?" he asked, pointing at one. "Yes," she replied, not looking. "He's got kind eyes." "He does," she said, already walking toward the kitchen. "That's the trouble." James didn't ask more. She handed him a mug. No milk, no sugar, and he didn't complain. They stood at the window while the kettle rumbled again, looking out at the small garden. "This is nice," he said. "Nice is overrated," Eleanor replied softly. And when he looked at her again, she wasn't smiling. Not yet. The kitchen was warmer than expected, not from the stove, but from the way Eleanor moved through it, steady, deliberate, humming something too soft to name. James sat at the small round table by the window, fingers drumming on his mug, eyes flicking from shelf to photo to her back. "Hope you like scrambled," she said, cracking eggs into the pan. "I like whatever someone else cooks," he replied, smiling. She turned slightly, half glancing at him. You don't live with anyone. He shook his head. Flatmates, rarely home, mostly just me and silence. She nodded. Silence has layers. Some days it wraps, other days it claws. He didn't answer right away. The eggs began to sizzle. Eleanor reached for the spatula, then paused. Come here, she said. James rose slowly. Unsure, she guided his hand to the handle. You stir, gently, don't scrape, just fold. Their hands touched briefly, warm against warm. A flicker of something passed between them. Nothing rushed, just presence. A shared current, like this? He asked. Exactly. They stood close, the scent of butter and pepper blooming in the space between them. She stepped back. Toast. He nodded. She slid bread into the toaster, then pulled 2 plates from the cupboard, moving with the kind of confidence that came from doing things 1,000 times. When they sat down to eat, neither spoke at first. The silence wasn't heavy. It waited halfway through his meal. James leaned back slightly. This feels odd. How so? Like we've done this before. We have, she said, eyes meeting his. In some life or another. He smiled faintly. You talk like you've lived several. Maybe I have, she said. Or maybe I've just paid close attention. When the food was finished, she opened the fridge, pulled out 2 beers, handed him one without asking. James blinked, surprised. Morning beer. Judgment-free zone, she said. He popped the cap. You're full of contradictions. She sat beside him on the couch now, their knees nearly touching. She threw a knitted blanket over her lap and lifted one edge. Well, she asked. He hesitated, then slid beneath it. They didn't speak for a while. The television flickered with the opening of an old film, one Eleanor chose deliberately. A story of a woman not unlike herself, older, still, until someone younger shook loose the dust. James noticed within minutes. Subtle, he said. I don't do subtle, she replied, not looking at him. They watched in near silence, occasionally sipping beer, occasionally stealing glances when they thought the other wasn't looking. Eleanor felt the space between them shrink, slowly, invisibly, like a breath taken in and held. Halfway through, she turned. What do you think? She asked. He shrugged. It's interesting, the dynamic. Yeah. Do you think she's taking advantage? He looked at her then. Maybe it's the other way around. Her brow lifted. You think he's the one in control? James took a slow sip. I think when 2 people both know what they want, control becomes irrelevant. She nodded. Another quiet moment passed. The room hummed with something more than electricity. She leaned in just slightly, close enough to speak without needing volume. And you? His throat moved as he swallowed. What about me, if you were him? He held her gaze. Something in him stilled, then burned. I think, he said slowly, I'd be just fine. She watched him a moment longer, then smiled, faintly, and leaned back against the couch. The movie played on, but neither of them were watching anymore. It began without warning, not a plan, not even a thought. Eleanor leaned forward, her hand still wrapped around the neck of the beer bottle, lips slightly parted as if to speak. James turned to her at the same moment. And there, in the space where language failed, they simply closed the distance. The kiss wasn't urgent. It wasn't messy or dramatic. It was the kind of kiss that remembered how stillness could be powerful. The kind that asked and answered something unsaid. His hands hovered for a moment, unsure. Hers didn't. The air between them shifted, slowed, like a room remembering how to breathe. When their foreheads touched, neither pulled away. Eleanor let out a breath, quiet, shaky, but not afraid. James's fingers brushed her sleeve, then withdrew, like a tide testing shoreline. And then she stood, her voice barely a whisper. "You should go." James blinked, confused. "Did I do something wrong?" She shook her head. "No, that's the problem." He rose slowly, picking up his coat. He didn't ask again. At the door, he hesitated. "I didn't expect that." "Neither did I." He gave her a small, hesitant smile. "Will I see you again?" She didn't answer. The door closed with a soft click. Eleanor stood in the hallway, the silence pressing back in like a fog. She didn't cry. She didn't pace. She simply walked into the kitchen, rinsed the 2 glasses, and placed them neatly on the drying rack. Later that afternoon, Martin returned home with a paper bag of pastries. He kissed her cheek, warm and familiar. She smiled, said thank you. They had dinner together, talked about the neighbor's cat, the rain forecast, a road closure near the bypass. She laughed in the right places, nodded at the right times. But when Martin reached across the table and took her hand, she noticed, for the first time, that his grip had no heat. That night, he reached for her in bed. She didn't resist. She didn't initiate. She lay there, quietly, the ceiling becoming a screen where memories replayed, not of Martin's hands, but of James's breath, not of the touch itself, but the energy it carried, the warmth, the invitation. And in that moment, her body was there, but her soul floated somewhere else entirely, a place where the rules didn't live, where the names didn't matter, where longing was not shameful, only sharp. Afterward, Martin fell asleep quickly. Gentle snores filled the quiet. Eleanor remained still, her eyes open, her chest full of something that didn't have a name, not guilt, not regret, just ache, just echo, just the knowing that once the edge is crossed, the line never fades completely. Martin had been watching her differently, not always, just in flickers, moments where his eyes lingered a second too long, like he was trying to remember something about her that had quietly gone missing. That morning, he offered her a slice of orange before she asked. She took it, murmured thanks. The citrus burst against her tongue, too sharp for how early it was. He smiled. "You've been walking longer lately." She froze for a breath, then answered, "The air clears my head." Nothing wrong with that. But the way he said it, it wasn't suspicious. It was tender. And somehow that hurt more. Later, Eleanor stood in the garden, hands dusted with soil. She trimmed a browning edge off a fern, her fingers moving more carefully than usual. Her thoughts kept returning to James, his voice, his nearness, the way he hadn't filled silence with nervous noise. She'd told herself it was over, that moment had passed. But something in her still waited, like a page half turned behind her. She heard footsteps, not Martin's. James stood just outside the gate, hoodie damp from the air, eyes searching. "I wasn't sure I should come," he said. "Then why did you?" "I didn't want to leave things like that." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned back to the plant and plucked a curled leaf. He watched her silent. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "About what that was." James stepped closer. "And it wasn't a mistake," she said. "But it can't be a pattern." He nodded, though his jaw tensed. "I didn't come to push," he said. "I just wanted to see if you were okay." She met his eyes. "I'm not," he blinked. "I'm not okay," she repeated, voice steady now. "But I'm also not sorry." He stepped inside the gate. They stood close, not touching, the distance between them charged, like two storm fronts hovering too near. "I thought I'd feel shame," she said, "but mostly I just feel awake." James looked at her, gentler now. "That's something, isn't it?" She smiled faintly. "It's everything." They didn't touch, not this time, but the energy between them moved like a quiet current, a shared ache, a recognition. When he left, he didn't look back. Eleanor turned to her garden again. But the plants blurred inside the house. Martin set the table for lunch, hummed an old tune. When she came in, he smiled and said, "I picked up your favorite bread." She nodded, sat, spread butter on the slice like it meant nothing. But her hands trembled, just enough for the knife to catch, just enough for her to feel it. The truth wasn't loud yet, but it had begun humming under the skin. That evening, Eleanor found Martin in the lounge, his glasses slipping down his nose, a book balanced on one knee. He looked up when she entered, his eyes soft. "I was thinking," he said. "We haven't been away in years, just the two of us." She paused. "No, I suppose we haven't. We could a weekend, somewhere by the coast." She nodded, but something in her chest tightened. He set the book down and looked at her more closely. "You've been distant lately." She sat across from him, the armchair cold beneath her thighs. "I've been tired." "Not just tired," he said gently. "Quiet, different." She looked at him, noticed the lines deeper around his eyes, the way his fingers twisted his wedding band when he was unsure. "I don't know how to say this," he said, "but I miss you. I miss how it used to be." Eleanor felt the ache rise in her throat. "I'm still here." "Are you?" His question wasn't angry, just bare. She lowered her gaze. "Maybe not in the way you want me to be." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Tell me, please, whatever it is." She couldn't, not then. Not with his eyes like that, full of hurt, but hope, like someone waiting at a door they'd never thought would close. So she did what she always had, she lied. "Nothing's wrong, Martin, I promise." He exhaled. Some part of him believed her, or needed to that night. He touched her, gently, tentatively, like someone asking to be let back in. She let him. The room was quiet, the air warm. His hands followed the same paths they always had, with the same reverence, the same rhythm. But Eleanor's mind drifted. She tried to anchor herself in the moment, in the familiar weight, the comfort. But the sensations passed over her like wind through curtains. Felt, but not held, she closed her eyes and tried to remember how to want this. Instead, she remembered how she had felt with James, not the act, not the kiss, the pulse of it, the heat beneath the skin, the lightness in her limbs, the feeling of being seen fully, hungrily. Martin kissed her shoulder, whispered her name. She murmured back, but the syllables felt borrowed. When it was over, he smiled, kissed her forehead, rolled onto his side within minutes. He was asleep. Eleanor lay still, her breath shallow, her skin cooling. She stared at the ceiling, every line in the plaster suddenly clear, too sharp. She was here, and she was. The ache in her chest was no longer distant. It had moved in. It had unpacked. She wrote the letter in the quiet part of the morning. That fragile hour when the light barely touched the curtains, and even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Eleanor sat at the small desk by the window, pen poised above paper, unsure where to begin. Then the words came. Not planned, not polished, just truth, poured slow. James, I don't know what you were meant to be in my life. A mirror, a mistake, a flare in a sky that had gone too dim. You make me feel like I've stepped outside of time, like the version of myself I'd buried a decade ago is suddenly standing beside me, tapping my shoulder, asking if I remember her. I don't want a future with you. That's not what this is. But I want to remember what it felt like to exist in your gaze, to feel raw, awake, capable of collapse. Thank you for that. Ishi folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, without sealing it. No address. No stamp. She left it tucked inside the drawer, beneath old receipts and birthday cards. That afternoon, Martin found her in the kitchen, elbow deep in soapy water. He leaned against the counter, watching. I was looking for the spare keys, he said. Needed the drawer. She nodded, not turning. Found something else. Now she turned. He held the envelope, unread, but opened. His eyes didn't accuse. They didn't rage, but they had questions. She dried her hands slowly. You read it. He shook his head. Didn't have to. She nodded once. The silence stretched thicker than air, almost liquid. Martin spoke first. Are you in love with him? No, she said, not like that. Then what is this? She looked at the floor, then at him. It's me, remembering I'm still alive. He swallowed, jaw working. Is it not enough what we have? It's kind, she said softly. It's safe, but it's quiet. And I've been quiet for so long, Martin. He closed his eyes. I thought we were okay. So did I. A beat passed. Are you going to leave? She shook her head. I don't know. He didn't nod, didn't speak, just turned and left the room. Eleanor stood at the sink, hands still warm from the water. Outside, the rain had returned, soft and constant. She didn't cry. She just stood, feeling the space between the past and whatever came next. Stretch and breathe. Martin didn't come home that night. He left no note, no explanation, just the car missing from the drive, and a coat gone from the hook. Eleanor didn't panic. She didn't pace or call. She sat in the kitchen with the lights off, the glow of the oven clock marking each slow hour. When the sun rose, she didn't feel rested, only emptied. She dressed without thought, pulled on her coat, stepped outside. The morning was pale and silent, the kind of hush that followed a truth dropped too loud. She walked past the hedges, the school gates, the post office, toward the one corner she hadn't allowed herself to visit since everything blurred. And there he was, James, leaning against the same brick wall, hands in his pockets, head bowed like a photograph, never moved. He looked up when she approached. "I heard what happened." She nodded. Didn't know people still talked like that. He gave a faint smile. "Martin came to see me." She blinked. "He what?" James looked down. Didn't shout, didn't accuse, just asked what I was. "And what did you say?" "That I wasn't the problem." Silence. Then Eleanor stepped closer. "You're leaving, aren't you?" James nodded. "Few towns over, new project." New noise. A beat passed. "I won't follow," she said. "I wouldn't ask you to." They stood there, two people pulled by something neither could name. Finally, standing still, James spoke, softer now. "I didn't come into your life to stay. I think I came to wake you up." She felt her chest tighten. "You did." They didn't embrace, didn't kiss. They just stood close enough for breath to carry across skin. "Will I forget you?" she asked. "Only the surface," he said. "But the part of you I touched, that part won't sleep again." She nodded. He turned to go, paused, then added, "I'm glad it was you." She watched him walk away, not fast, not dramatic, just a steady rhythm, fading with distance. Eleanor stayed at the wall for a long time. She touched the brick, cold, solid, then turned and walked home, slower this time. And somewhere beneath the ache, a quiet clarity began to bloom. The garden was quiet, the soil still dark from last night's rain, leaves glistening faintly in the morning sun. Eleanor stood at the edge of the path, a pair of shears in her hand, not yet ready to use them. The silence felt different now, not heavy, not empty, just honest. The front door creaked open behind her. Martin stepped out, jacket unzipped, hands bare. They looked at each other, not in confrontation, not in warmth, just recognition. He joined her near the flower bed for a moment. Neither spoke. Then, "Do we still try?" he asked. His voice was quiet, uneven. Eleanor didn't look at him. Her gaze remained on a drooping stem. "I don't know who I am yet," she said. He nodded once slowly. "That's fair." Another silence. But it didn't ache this time. She clipped the damaged leaf, watched it fall. Martin sat on the low stone wall nearby, elbows on knees, staring at the grass. "Do you want to be alone?" "I think I already am," she said, "but not in a bad way." He looked at her again. "You changed." "I had to." He exhaled, long and tired, but not resentful. "I'll make coffee," he said finally. She nodded. He went inside. Eleanor remained in the garden, finished trimming the fern, wiped her hands on her trousers, and stood still. The wind moved through the branches, not loud, not soft, just there. She looked at the gate. No one stood there now, no one waited. And yet, something had arrived, not James, not Martin, not regret herself. She turned toward the house, toward the kettle beginning to hiss, and stepped forward, each footfall gentle, certain, whatever came next, it would not be a return, it would be a beginning. And this time, it would have her name on it,